Well, I am so excited for this conversation. I am so excited for this conversation. And I'm excited because I want to introduce you to a very, very special person in our lives. And this, first of all, is my wife, Sue, if you haven't met her already, the love of my life. And this is Amanda Rooker. Amanda Rooker is just an extraordinary. She's with Split Seed Publishing, Split Seed Media. Thank you, Susie. She edited my life's purpose work, which is the book, Leading Well from Within, which is the neuroscience and mindfulness-based framework for conscious leadership. I couldn't have done this without Amanda. So we also wrote not only the book, but we also actually wrote the cliff notes of the book as well. And working with Amanda on this project, I actually searched for a lot of book editors on the journey. The reason why I engaged Amanda is not only because of the brilliance of who she is, because I looked at all of the work, her body of work beforehand, so that box was checked. But I remember, Amanda, we were on the phone together, and the way that you responded to the content, the topic, which, and fundamentally, leading well from within is fundamentally, if you want to lead well in the world, how do you lead well inside yourself first? And by the way, everybody leads because leadership's an act of influence. So if you can think about wherever you have influence in your life, you will discover every touch point in your life is a touch point of influence. Yes. So, and a lot of this inner journey is the inner journey of navigating stress, uncertainty, and self-doubt, so you can focus on what really matters in your life, what really counts. And it was, the heart of this was me making meaning of my suffering through my, the depression that I had in medical school. And, there was that early founding story. And, this became that heart of the book. And my work in evidence-based medicine, my work in the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine, my work in conscious capitalism became an integration which led to this book. And Amanda actually felt into the journey. And, and she said, I want to learn this myself. And so we actually not only did I benefit from Amanda's, just brilliance, I benefited from her heart, her open heart of wanting to do this work for herself. And we got on Zooms and hopping on the Zooms, every couple of weeks to actually watch this take shape. We engaged in this flow of emergence, and just things came in. Things flowed through that I think we were both amazed by how it was taking shape. So before I go on, I'm also going to give you context about why I'm engaging Amanda again at this moment in time, and what the vision for this channel living. We're on a path to actually the evolution of this work. The evolution of this work is the channel living well from within. The evolution of this work is living well from within, which is the actual living embodiment of this book in a way. Oops. I'm going to pull that. That's real life. I'm taking, it's a living embodiment of the book with learning lessons that I would love, love, love to be part of a movement that transforms your life, your lives, your lives, with healing, transformational growth and learning, and being part of a movement that creates thriving and flourishing in the world at this pivotal moment in time where we're sitting in a time of COVID, we're sitting in a time of isolation, we're sitting in a time of crackling mental health, we're sitting in a time of deep, here in America, with deep political polarization, where we've just come through the election and we're asking the question, how do we heal our country? And this is going on all throughout the world. And then there's been a reawakening of systemic racism. I mean, 400 years plus in this country. I come from South Africa. That goes back, and this is a time of actually, this is our time for actually promoting racial justice, to really kind of doing the work further in that arena. And so, the fact that I have this brain cancer is a backstory, but I feel called deeply right now to actually serve in whatever time I have remaining, in this work. I feel called by God. I mean, this is why I feel blessed by my cancer. It's given me a moment in time where I feel with what's flowing through is in service of you, of calling to a movement to be a part. I mean, I hope you feel, I'm saying calling to a movement, join us if you would like to be involved as part of a movement to engage in healing, transformational growth, and creating thriving and flourishing, first within yourself, then within your families. And when I say families, that's families at home for sure, but this is also families at work. Workplace needs healing. Then taking out in the communities, and then taking it out even further into kind of the largest societal issues of our time. It's that big. So again, my cancer is only a backstory over here. It's lessons learned that are pouring through this time. And what I hope is more important. Certainly I'm having an awakening, but more than that, what I hope is that this sparks some awakening in you. This sparks some awakening in you, which is meaningful in your life and in communities at large. Amanda, I am so excited to embark on this project with you. We're putting together, as you can see, we've launched this YouTube channel, the YouTube channel is Living Well From Within. And the working title right now in the playlist so it's a journey to inspire healing, growth, and thriving in your life and the world. And then the subtitle of that, it's our Friedland journey into making every moment count and living a loving life. And that may iterate further. And that's why I'm here with Amanda, and we're going to conceive about how we can kind of, spark and actually create an experience for you watching the videos that's not only life enriching to you. And you may have the feeling as you're watching these videos, you'll see that it's it's almost like a Netflix series. It's a Netflix series that you can binge on from beginning to end. It's ultimately, it's an unfolding human drama. It's an unfolding human drama, you know, with the exception that the unfolding human drama will have life lessons that I hope you will find immediately applicable and relevant to your lives in the way that they actually, you know, spark greater richness, joy, healing in your lives, and your ability to actually bring that loving awakening in yourself into your families, communities, and the world at large. So I'm so excited to actually make this so incredibly accessible and easy. And we're about to talk about our vision for how we're going to do this. It's our first conversation we're having on this topic. And just finally, to pivot back to Amanda, you know, in Split Seed Media, Amanda already is on the arc of working with, if you ever be fortunate enough to work with Amanda, her, you know, her passion and purpose in her life is to help individuals bring transformational messages, their transformational messages to the world, where they can create movements of transformation. And so I can't think of anybody better to engage, you know, at this time than Amanda to help us all build this movement together. So, Amanda.
Oh, so do you mind if I just tell a little bit about the influence your work has had personally on my life? So I'd love to just speak directly to you, Danny, because, you know, when I first met you, I was on the edge of burnout and I didn't realize it. I was just pushing. Our business was growing, flourishing. I also work with my life and business partner, Ben Rooker. So, you know, it was a husband and wife team. We had 2 small kids at home and lots of opportunities, working long hours. And inside, I was just burning out slowly. And your legacy was embedded in me because I got to practice, I got to learn from your story, so many points of connection from your own personal story that you shared. I could see that emerge. And all of the tools, resources, journey, your own healing journey, where you discovered how to shift from stress to creativity and to flourish in your own life, and that it was really possible to do that holistically and to be an example and to share that with other people. And the one biggest lesson that I learned from you, I have always had a very regular prayer and journaling / meditation practice since I was a teenager. That has always been my rock, that morning time for me. And what I didn't realize was that my practice was just a process of me going over my anxieties over and over and over and over again and never making the switch to awareness. I was stuck in the default mode network, right? So I'm trying to bring up these vocabulary. And I was just stuck making these grooves in my brain that were not serving me and that were just kind of pushing me further and further into stress when I believed I was doing something good for myself. I was setting aside quiet time every morning to just listen. And what I learned from you was the hub of awareness, which I believe comes from Dan Siegel too. There are many people who teach on that, but I received that from your work. The ability to stand apart from my thoughts and feelings and emotions. I had never experienced that before. I truly believed that my thoughts and feelings were me. And it was reality. And that one tool changed my life. I mean, that seed that was planted, me being able to practice, you know, I already had the habit of sitting down every morning. And now it was an oasis instead of just me worrying about all these things I had to do and how were they going to get done. It just shifted to spaciousness. And all of a sudden, the resources that were there all along, I could see them, and there's just so much more ease. So I wanted, and since then, you know, it really started a healing journey for me and a journey of growth one that has continued, that's reflected more in the work that I do, because I really do feel, I feel more resilient. I know I'm more resilient. I'm capable of helping more people because of the work that we did together to elevate more and more messages in the world. And there are downloads happening all over the world right now. People are getting all sorts of messages that need to be shared. So, you know, you embarking on this journey with me so long ago, I feel like just plays a role in so much that can happen in the world today.
Wow. Oh, yeah, man, first of all, I'm in awe of what you've shared, and I'm in awe because I just so dearly love and appreciate you. Just on that first, like, personal thing, but I'm equally in awe because what I've awakened to is just the loving, conscious energy within the field, and I trust that something conspired to bring us together. Something even before either of us understood it. How is it possible that we came together at these arcs of our journey to make meaning of it? And actually, what it felt like when we actually did our work together, and it feels definitely like this now. I mean, we're at really a beautiful point in time to take our work further. We're at this beautiful point in time to take our work further. Looking back, we had these sessions together. We were in a flow of co-emergence. There was something that it wasn't really coming from either of our brains. It was coming from the space between. I don't know if you actually had that sense.
Yes.
And we would step back, and even when you made some suggestions, like critical suggestions on book structure, in terms of, like, I would look at that and we landed up with 3 parts of the book, and they each have 4 chapters, and it's just like, and then there's this whole kind of symbolism around 4 with as a symbol of wholeness. And then, we figured, the cover is a fractal.
Yes.
And it's basically, it's ultimately, leading well from within. It's about, the root of the word health is wholeness.
Yes.
The root of the word health is wholeness. And so actually this journey is a journey into wholeness. And it's a journey of reminding yourselves of the essential wholeness you already are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even about becoming whole. It's about reminding yourself of the essential wholeness you already are. And we had this logo, and it's a sunflower.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the fact that, the number 4, we've got 4 chapters in each part, and you sent me a link that this was wholeness. It was coming from some part that is far bigger than any of us can conceive of. And I know you have a deep spiritual practice too, and we're very well aligned on that. So it's coming from the grace of God, however you want to actually call this mysterious field, loving conscious energy, whatever we call this field, it's a mystery, but it exists. I mean, I'm feeling it as a real and tangible. And that's why, I've shared that I have no fear of death. I have no fear of death. I'm ready to merge into this field. Sue says, try to be patient with,
Not yet.
But I don't, Sue will tell you, I don't wake up, I can't sleep, but it's not because I'm nervous. It's because I'm excited. I've never felt more fully alive. I've never felt more fully whole. And it's not because somehow I'm special or extra special. I'm very ordinary in many ways. But because I've actually, I shared early on, in an earlier video when I was with, we have a dear connection in the exchange community, and John Berghoff leads that community, and he's probably the greatest facilitator in the world. And he asked the question, one of our sessions, he showed Otto Scharmer's work, and it's like a U, and he asked the question, what's dying in you? What needs to die so something new can be reborn? So the answer that I came up with was, what's dying for me is the fear of death itself. And, and so there's a fear of physical death, certainly, because I'm there. I trust that this is a loving, conscious presence that I would be moving into. I would trust that but I also have coming into my wholeness, and my wholeness comes from being in service of something larger than myself.
Yes.
Releasing my ego needs. And it's just trusting that I'm in service of something larger than myself. You know, I think that's what people trust, that I'm not claiming any stake in the field. I'm not claiming any stake in the field. And that's oftentimes where you get corruption, when you have religions claiming a stake that somehow they've got a unique access to that field. We all have access to the field. We all have access. The only thing we have is to release and turn into it and allow our hearts to break open in a cycle of receiving and giving love. That's in fact, you know, on a seminar that we did in day 7 of my healing, I spoke, if you go back earlier on in the series, I spoke at this, for the exchange community in prepping for our Awakening Conscious Deep Dive coming up in a couple of weeks. And somebody asked the question, is the fabric of the field loving consciousness? It's just because it's a big question, because that actually shapes, it reminds me of Einstein, who said, you know, the biggest question we need to ask ourselves is, do we live in a hostile or a friendly universe? That question restructures everything. And I'm experiencing this as a friendly, loving, infinite universe. There's infinite loving, and that's why my fear of death is dying itself, because I trust that. And what I've learned is that what I anticipated about spiritual awakening is very different now that I'm experiencing it. Initially, I thought spiritual awakening was where you get to a place with some kind of wisdom, you know, some kind of mystical wisdom. You emulate being, somehow that's a guru. And actually, even Zach came to me in the kitchen, says, "Dad, you're sounding like a guru." I said, "I'm not a guru. I'm not a guru. I don't want to claim that at all. I'm just an ordinary purpose. I give it all away to the field." And what I'm discovering is that simply the surrender into this field of loving energy, surrendering into the field of loving energy and making every moment count in loving, connected relationships, every moment count, and actually recycling. I have such love for the field. I have such love for the field of collective loving intelligence. And I am being blessed by that over and over again. And it's manifesting as extraordinary serendipities. It's manifesting as unbelievable serendipities. It's just like the field is wide open. And then actually bringing that aliveness to each touch point, each moment of relationship. And this, by the way, this is a moment that counts between us. This is a moment that counts. This moment now is a glorious embodiment of us receiving and giving love together. You know, it's, and to have Sue here with me to kind of be a part of this and bear witness to this. I mean, Sue and me, we are just having so, I know Sue hasn't been on video yet, but the moments that we've spent have been the most special of our lives. I so love and appreciate you. It's that energy. And so when the question was asked, is the fabric of the universe loving conscious energy? Is it a friendly universe? I was able to say with conviction, yes. With conviction, yes. And then the relief was, like they say, well, it's really reassuring because you have a background in science. But these have been age-old. I mean, the wisdom of spiritual traditions has been the wisdom Houston Smith spoke about. He's one of the world authorities on comparative religion. He says the wisdom of faith is compassion. The wisdom of faith is compassion. So when you look at all of the spiritual traditions, that's the essence. The wisdom of faith is compassion. Now, when it comes to religion, you know, the politicization of religions, the corruption is religions trying to claim a stake in the field.
Mm-hmm.
They say, like, we're holier than thou. This is the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way that this is, follow this way and you'll get access to the field. That access to the field is very personal. It's however you rotate in the field, however you choose to rotate in the field, to orient in the field. And all you have to do is open your heart to love. Open your heart to receiving and giving love, and bring that into every touch point of interaction. Every touch point of interaction. And as you do so, you experience healing. We experience healing. We experience transformational growth, and we create an intense feeling that I'm feeling right now of wellness and well-being, an intense feeling of wellness and well-being. You know, optimal health is a state of being dynamic, state of being fully alive. I feel more alive now than I ever have in my life. It's an intense feeling of wellness and well-being, regardless of my brain cancer, And that leads to the possibility for actually being a part of a movement, when we're connected to this, when we all come together as part of a global movement, where we can create, essentially, through that healing, transformational growth, and thriving and flourishing on a global scale. It's possible. It's possible. And this is what we're here to do.
Yes. Well, you know, and already what you posted through your playlist, through your YouTube channel, you know, from what I've seen, what I love about the fact that you're videoing this in real time as it happens, right? We're seeing step by step by step. And that moment of feeling very connected to the field, that moment of spiritual awakening, when I'm hearing you describe it in real time on those videos, it awakens something in me, and it causes me to recognize when those moments have already happened for me too. I've had 1 or 2 moments in my life that I can't sleep because I'm so energized, because something has opened, you know, so I have those experiences in my life, maybe once or twice before, you know, but it's just, it speaks to the universality, I think, of your message too, that, you know, brain cancer was your opening. It was your portal to this awakening, and it was profound and huge, and you're giving us the gift of watching it. But there are smaller moments that all of us experience that we can instantly connect to, I think, just by watching you share your own. So I mean, I feel like it's so accessible already through what you're sharing. And yeah, I can absolutely see the potential for a movement, because, you know, in my life, I am seeing, this is the growing edge I'm on right now, is how to live from an awakened heart in every moment with the people that I'm with, to live a loving life, like you've told your sons, to know that the purpose of life is to live fully. Yeah. That's it. It's that simple, right? Like the birds in your backyard, right?
We were out there this morning and we were just marveling at just how much life and flourishing is happening in the garden. You want to just reflect on that? We were watching together.
Yeah, well, we were noticing they were playing together.
Oh, the birds?
Yeah, and the
okay.
Was just you know, no sense of violence or, you know, predatory nature of it. It was just pure joy. Like they were had enough food, they had enough water, they had a great shelter, and they were just all together. Like different species were together and sharing, and, you know, just having living life joyfully. And we thought, well, that is their essence, right? Their perfect life.
And so we're bearing witness. We're looking at the birds in the garden, and then we're actually asking, you know, how does that apply to the possibility for healing in our country? What might it look like at this point in time where different species, you know, different perspectives are playing joyfully together? Because they're feeling psychologically safe, they feel more connected in communities, and they're living at that elevated realm of significance where they are co-creating the joy of what it means to experience themselves as being fully alive together.
Yes. And what emerges for me is like, well, what is it that blocks us individually from experiencing that, you know, ability to be connected to the field, to loving kindness, to, what is it that blocks? That's the question I'm asking myself. What is blocking me from that experience?
I was up at bugging Sue at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm really kind of like ruining her sleep.
I don't get any sleep. So excited. He's all the energy, like just reverberating. And he's awake and he's like poking me. Like,
Are you awake? I am now. Right.
Yeah. So then she actually said, okay, is this a moment? And she clicks record.
Oh.
Clicks record. And I did this hour-long riff, almost like a podcast for an hour. And what I said is, you know, in my experience for that answer, I think it is the fear of death that actually plucks us out of the field, ironically. So on the one hand, the fear of death plucks us out of the field, or if we know how to orient into our relationship with death in a healthier way, it creates unbridled liberation. So I'm experiencing this unbridled liberation. So here's what I mean by the fear of death. When we fear death, we do all sorts of things that actually create strain in our lives to avoid that death, right?
Yes.
And so that creates its own kind of corruption that plucks us out of the field. We don't live fully because we're in fear of death. That's one block. But Amanda, you and I wrote about this. You know, the deeper fear of death is the fear of living in validation. The fear of it's the fear of living death. And what that is, that fear is based in the fear that we're somehow not good enough. It's the fear of that ultimately that we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough. There's some fear of uncertainty, but it's the fear that we're not good enough.
The fear of being disconnected from the source, right?
Disconnected from the source.
That's another way of saying fear of death, right?
Yeah, fear of death.
Yeah.
We say we're not worthy of the source. We're not worthy of the source. And this is what makes self-doubt so terrifying. And we wrote about this, you know, in looking at the science of this, the research, that, you know, individuals tend to get more love and acceptance when they do things well, all through their lives, starting with their parents, starting with, you know, reinforced by society. We get more love and respect when we do things well than we don't. And then what that results in is we become internally conditioned to predicate our self-acceptance on that success. So what we're left with is this implicit childhood contract: I will love and accept myself if I prove myself worthy.
Yeah.
The corollary to that, what that instills us in the fear that instills is, if I discover I'm not worthy, I won't be able to accept myself. And that becomes the fear of living in validation, the living death. And the sad thing is, some people commit suicide to find relative safety in physical death. They're looking to merge with a field to escape that living threat, the living death.
Yes.
So ultimately, it's, you know, how do you actually work that through? How do we work that through? Remember, we wrote about how you change your childhood contract. You change your childhood contract. You actually rewrite the contract because you understand that, first of all, everybody has doubts of self-worth. That we discovered on the research as well. That's universal. So we have to figure out kind of like, if it's universal, how's it useful? So the main function of self-doubt in the creative aspect of it, it serves learning. When you come back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the very essence, self-doubt is a gift, because when used well, it actually helps us come back to Maslow's hierarchy, and you look at safety, love and belonging, and significance. It really helps us stay safe. You know, I'm thinking when Zach was, 16, he launched himself off like a 20-foot cliff and he almost broke his foot. I said, well, Zach, self-doubt might have served you a little bit better right now. And then it also serves us well. It keeps us socially appropriate. So actually I value, when we say something wrong, we say, oh my God, did I say that?
Yeah.
That's a healthy self-doubt because it keeps
Yes.
us socially appropriate. And actually even imposter syndrome, many leaders, it's an epidemic of imposter syndrome. It actually keeps us engaged with humility. I get terrified when people don't have, some degree of healthy imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And by the extreme,
humility. Yes.
And by the extreme, you have narcissism. And we've got a recent, great example of that with the chaos that and ultimately when at that level, the self-doubt actually helps us connect more fully. And then to the level of significance, when you ask the questions, what is my life purpose? That's a type of a self-doubt that's actually tethered to the field. You're saying, how can I actually be in service of what's emerging through the field through me? So that is creative self-doubt. That is creative self-doubt. That's creative self-doubt. And Jung talks about the difference between small s self-doubt and big S self-doubt. So the big S self-doubt is essentially the creative self-doubt, big S self-doubt, where we're in service of something larger than ourselves.
Yes.
And the function of healthy self-doubt is the function of learning. It's the function of learning. That's the fundamental gift. Now the corruption is when we have self-doubt about having self-doubt.
Right.
Because of that childhood contract. Because of the childhood contract says, I cannot love and accept myself unless I prove myself worthy. That layers on. That means that every time self-doubt arises, it might threaten that is today the day that I'm going to find out something that actually gives me an answer where I discover I'm not worthy, where I can't accept myself. That plucks you out of the field. So now we have self-doubt about having self-doubt. And when we're in that loop, we begin to feel unsafe internally. We begin to feel disconnected from ourselves, and we begin to become inhibited from our dreams. And it's so uncomfortable. Let me just say that that's reactive self-doubt with the small s. Now, what typically happens is creative self-doubt braids itself around reactive self-doubt. They often go two together, and they both have their signatures of discomfort. So for example, is the signature oftentimes of creative self-doubt is a restlessness. Sometimes there's a thwarting and you have the sense of an unrequited yearning. You have like an activation. It's very activating. It can make you restless. It's am I on my path? And that alone feels uncomfortable. The signature of reactive self-doubt, small s self-doubt, is one of depletion and feeling small, right?
Yes.
And then they braid themselves, and oftentimes they go hand in hand, because when you're asking the question, what is my largest, boldest dream? You're asking the question of creative self-doubt. Sometimes what emerges into that question is the reactive strand of saying, well, I'm not good enough to do that. I'm not good enough to do that. And all of a sudden it plucks you out of the field. So what happens is, and the way you get plucked out of the field is the creative and the reactive self-doubt braid themselves around it. And with each of their own unique discomforts, now you have intense discomfort and we don't know what that's about. And so what we say is, I don't want to deal with self-doubt at all. And you push everything away. We drink, we distract ourselves with whatever,
resist it.
With whatever, just like numbing ourselves out in the various way we numb ourselves out to escape the uncomfortable feelings of self-doubt, plucking ourselves out of the field. But what we've done is, in doing so, in ignoring the entire constellation of self-doubt, what we've done is we've amputated ourselves, our connection, from the creative strand. Right? So it's the ability to lean into self-doubt, to actually release the fear of self-doubt and rewrite the childhood contract. Embrace the learning in the creative strand of self-doubt. And as you learn and you keep asking, like, what does this moment have to teach me? What does this moment have to teach me? What does this moment have to teach me? And, drain that learning dry. And I'm going to get into kind of what this means to our project. Drain that learning dry. As we, at the same time, in rewriting our childhood contract, I love and accept myself, doubts of self-worth and all. Essentially what we're doing with that rewritten contract, I love and accept myself, doubts of self-worth and all, in the embrace of self-doubt, we're bringing compassion to our moments of self-doubt. Mm-hmm. We're opening to the field of loving compassion. We're just allowing ourselves trust that we're all children of God, trusting we're all children of God. We're loved and held. We're loved and held by the field, and we're actually we're remembering the essential wholeness, who we are, that comes out of the field. That's our birthright. That is our birthright, our God-given birthright. Ultimately, it's really interesting. The root of the word health is wholeness. The root of the word patience is to suffer. So patients suffer from fragmentation of mind, body, and spirit. And the role of the healer, same root word, is to remind people of the essential wholeness they already are. And that's a big part of our work together. Mm-hmm. If there's any message that you're getting listening to this, I want to invest you in a timeless reminder. Whenever you have doubt, in whichever way you lean in, please know you're loved and that you're whole, you're good enough as you are right now, And from that place of wholeness, we're fully connected to the field. We're fully connected. And we can embrace the field with the wisdom that it has to offer, to inspire. That's the experience of you open your heart to the love that it flows through the field. And I think when any one of us are awakened in the space, whenever you actually come across somebody who has a loving presence, it awakens loving presence in us. It actually invites us into the field of loving presence. And so this experience of us going collectively through this together, and I imagine, if this sparks global awakening, just imagining how many discussions would be going on in living rooms, boardrooms, where those discussions, as people will awaken into the field of loving presence, to actually create, greater psychological safety and community for us to do the work of co-creation and purpose and significance. Ultimately, that is the healing journey, the role of the healer in reminding people of the essential wholeness they are. The role of the healer is to help reintegrate fragmented mind, body, and spirit, and the fear of stress and self-doubt, and the fear of death, both physical death and living invalidation of living death, is intensely fragmenting. So there's an opportunity over here in awakening. And so I'm going to come back to this loop. What I've discovered, in pulling all these threads together, what I've discovered is that the power source of conscious leadership, this is an evolution of our work, Amanda. We wrote a book on, which is a significant contribution. It's about the science and practice of conscious leadership. What does it mean to lead with awareness and consciousness and understand the influence that we're having, on everybody and on every touch point around us? And part of that's the neuroscience. You cannot not have influence. The only question we have to ask when you awaken to the influence you have is, am I having a positive influence on my environment, or am I having a negative influence in my environment? Am I showing up as a demand for somebody, or am I showing up as a resource for them, fundamentally speaking, right?
Yes.
So that is kind of what's represented here. But now I understand the power source of conscious leadership. The power source of conscious leadership is truly when it's connected to an awakened heart. That's the power source. The power source of conscious leadership is when it is connected to an awakened heart.
Mm. And that's, oh my gosh, that really lands for me, again, in the videos that you're sharing, because we get to see that happen. And that's the beauty, is that we don't have to make this shift alone. You know, even in having compassion on our own self-doubt, getting reconnected to the field, if we are in the presence of someone else who has an awakened heart, that catalyzes it. I think it awakens what's dormant in us.
Yes.
In an instant and direct way, where we don't have to figure it out on our own alone first. We can just be in the presence and have something activated in us, and maybe that starts us on our path too.
Well, I love the way we're actually going to build a movement together, because we create a large enough movement. We're all serving as reminders for each other.
Yes. Yes.
You know, ultimately, when you're touched by somebody who's awakened, it's reminding you of something that already exists in you.
Yes.
It reminds you of the wholeness that already exists in you. And all you have to do is release into the awareness of the essence of who you are, and complete and loved by God, but loved by the field. You know, this gets us back to, is this a hostile or a friendly universe? The answer to that question is, I believe we live in a friendly universe, and it's the corruption that actually takes us into a hostile universe. I believe the fabric. That's why Martin Luther King says, he says, the long arm of justice, you know, bends towards good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's basically coming back in alignment with the field. We may leave. You know, we take deep to, I think the last 4 years has been, you know, a very interesting detour. And, you know, some people would say, you know, some people will say that Trump happened to us. I think Trump happened for us.
Yes, I agree.
In some amazing way.
Yeah.
So it's just glorious to be on this project with you. And you know, I just want to kind of shift into talking about some kind of pragmatic. I want to go back. Let me pause here. Do you want to add anything at this point in our conversation?
Well, I feel like a whole path is opening up. You know, I feel like the question that's emerging for me is, I've seen this happening in you and in your family. It has awakened the knowledge that it is in me too. And I'm connected to it. I'm reminded that this is there, this awakened heart. And I'm very cognizant of the fact that I am not living from that place most of the time during my day. And that's the craving and the yearning, the restlessness. I think that you mentioned, you know, I see it as creative self-doubt, and I want to stay present with it. And I want to not condemn myself because I haven't lived this way before. I want to be grateful for the learning that I can see and can, you know, keep moving forward, and like, well, how can I begin to live that way now? And that's the journey.
Well, you know, I just so appreciate that we're going on this journey together, because from that place, we can serve each other. We can serve our community members. I don't even know how to kind of just, our community.
Yes,
our you know, community of people that are invested in this aligned movement really, really well, because it's not coming like from a place of having a, you know, like somehow we've got all the magic answers, but it's like a commitment to wanting to learn in this field and how we can actually kind of serve that. And so the fact that you're actually having those restlessness, I think when we work together and first think about, well, how would the way we message each description of the video,
yes,
each, you know, how does that spark a reconnection, a reminder?
That's right. Yes.
And so I would love to actually kind of share, you know, explore some ideas in terms of how we can make these videos even more meaningful, much more than an unfolding story. And part of this is going to be, some in my community want to get an update, just really on my cancer journey. And there's certainly going to be pieces woven in around that. And I appreciate that, but that's in my view, very secondary to the way you watch the videos. What's more meaningful to me is that every video has the capacity for a teaching point, has a capacity for you to spark learning in your life that creates the promise of, whatever we're going to iterate around. So let me just bring this up. I'm going to share my screen. So that's what we have in the channel right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have in the channel right now, the 28 videos currently launching. And right now the channel is called Living Well From Within. So I'm going to encourage you, I haven't quite figured this out, but there's a way for you to subscribe. I think after you watch any video, you get the option of subscribing. Mm-hmm. So I would invite each of you listening to now to subscribe to whatever link is below this video here right now, to just so you can actually stay in the flow of this unfolding human drama that is like in service, of all of you. And it's a journey to inspire healing, growth, and thriving in your life and the world. And
Season 1.
Yeah, but I know this is where we will need to do some kind of iteration. I'm so happy to actually so we'll get to iterate around this, and the subtitle, which is currently our Friedland family journey to making every moment count and living a loving life, in the channel of Leading Well From Within. And then one of the things is the encouragement to, if you find value in your learning, the way we build a movement together is, please feel free to share this with anybody you feel that could be touched and awakened by your awakening into this as well. So I would love to actually feel that we're all a part of this movement together, and we can continue just having incredibly rich and meaningful conversations that may grow larger and larger to actually at some point begin to have some societal impact at this critical moment in history. It's that large, this vision. So one of the things, let's start over here with the first video in the series. And I've got the series, the journey mapped out by day. This is kind of day 1 after my diagnosis. And so these first 2 videos are very raw, but they're raw and unfiltered. And it starts over here. And the first video is a message. I just got, the hospitalist was just in my room, and she read me the MRI report. And she read me the MRI report, and the MRI report says the findings are consistent with a high-grade 4 multicentric glioblastoma multiforme. And as an internist myself, as a physician internist myself, I knew, what that meant. Glioblastoma multiforme is the most aggressive form of brain cancer, grade 4. And I knew in that moment, immediately my mind went to, I have months to live, if that. So my first inclination was I wanted to send a message to my boys. I wanted to send a message to my boys to actually, to distill the message that the highest tribute they could pay me is, after they move through their grief, is if I leave an enduring message within them to live a loving life, they're going to find, not only will they find me in the field, but more importantly, they're going to find a grounding in their life that will continue to bless them with joy. And so I don't yet, here's for my hospital bed. And the one piece that I don't have right now, and maybe we'll iterate around these we'll iterate around some of the messages. I don't know in terms of the titles, but this is the part that I would love your help with, which is how do we summarize the essence of this video, but more importantly, how do we provide an active learning cycle? So let me just kind of break that, an active learning cycle where this is not just about me sharing that moment. It's about what everybody can learn from that moment as it relates to their lives. So let me just, can I share a little bit about the active learning cycle, and then we'll bring it back to what I'm imagining at the end of every one of these videos.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, for every video, we want to have some kind of point to it for the main goal, which is you know, to share these lessons with people. And so all of the description should kind of unfold like a curriculum.
Yeah.
Of like a little mini course.
Oh, I love that.
Of what are we learning here? And I also want to say about this one video to Zach and Bill. I did that. I wanted Danny to do that video because he was about to go in for a brain biopsy. And I didn't know if he was going to come out of it okay. Like, we recently in our family, we had a relative who had brain cancer, and Danny's sister-in-law, she had a brain biopsy and they messed it up and she was never the same. And already Danny was having word finding difficulties, unable to get the words out. And I didn't know if he was going to come out of this brain biopsy worse. And
was this right before the brain biopsy then, when this was recorded? Wow, okay.
Yeah. And then he was still having word finding difficulties. And so I wanted him to get this one message out to the boys just in case, right? So that's where we're coming from, is every day we don't really know if he's going to be able to speak freely and as like he is right now, like just the words are rolling off his tongue. He can't stop talking. Like he's got all this information that's downloading from God knows where, but he needs to get it out now because he couldn't get it out before when this day in the hospital. And the funny thing was, like about a half an hour after we did that video, Danny went to take a nap, and he 10 minutes in or so, he had a massive seizure in the hospital. And you know, complete where all the doctors had to run in to the room and get him out of it, and then they took him up to ICU. But after that seizure, it released something in his brain, and now we're seeing him talking. Like,
wow.
That was a big catalyst.
Wow.
A catalyst, but that seizure was a catalyst.
Yes.
The urgency of sharing whatever wisdom Danny has to download it to everyone now.
Right.
Yes.
Because it could be gone soon. And
yes,
we want to capture that. And that's kind of the urgency of doing videos and recording what we can, especially like I know when he's about to go on a long riff. And so I hit record because sometimes it turns out to be magic, you know, and I don't want to say, oh, you know, when we're trying to remember, you know, what was it that he said that day that was so profound? I don't want to have no record of that or no recollection of that. Like, I don't have a great memory anymore. And so that's why we want to get it down now.
Yeah.
Because now he's good, and we don't even know from day to day or week to week whether he can keep talking like this.
Yeah.
right.
Like the next 40 years worth of downloads and information from Danny is being compacted
You know,
to now.
Right.
Well, I'm
Yes.
so in awe of what you're sharing. That was just, that was amazing. And God only knows where this comes from. God only, the way you actually express that, God only knows where this comes from. I mean, it's coming from the field. I mean, so even the fact that I had a seizure, I consider as a gift from God. I mean, essentially it was God's version of electroshock therapy. Which hit my brain and discharged my block so that I could have this moment of like clarity and communication. I mean, when I had the block, I was actually in the middle of what took me to the hospital was I was in the middle of a coaching call with a client, and I knew what I wanted to say. I couldn't get the words out. I was like, literally, I went, ooh, ooh, ooh. Like I was like that. And then, Sue was away and like, couldn't get back in time. She was about half an hour away. And so I had to go to the hospital and I was basically saying, Uber. I was talking like that. And so that it eased up on that first video. So I was able to get that first video up a little bit, but when I had the seizure, what a miracle. I mean, it was a wild ride, but what a miracle that turned out to be. And so, what's profound about that first video, and you provided such glorious context for why that was so important for the first video. So let me just share the active learning cycle first, and what I hope we can convey in that description. So here, let me draw it out, and this is the active learning cycle is based on the work of Cole in experiential learning. And I've adapted this cycle into understanding that really there are three components. There are three components of, when you start out and you think to yourself, what is the most important? Interestingly enough, I actually ran Zach several months ago through the active learning cycle, but before I did, and actually I did it also with Bill. So I've taken both my boys through this active learning cycle. And I asked them the question, what is the most important skill to activate your learning and growth? And actually the answer is, Zach nailed it. He said, Dad, it's learning how to learn. That's the most important meta skill in learning how to. So this is a meta skill that invests you in learning how to learn. And so it's got three components. Certainly the first component is content or life experience. That's a vital part of all curriculum. It's a vital part of all curriculum, content or experience. However, the revelation of this is content and experience alone is not sufficient to create change. And the evidence is that history repeats itself. So sometimes we don't learn anything from content or experience. So what is necessary to create change, meaningful change, is the metabolism and digestion of that content and experience in high quality reflection. In high quality reflection, which leads to those insights, that conceptualization of insights that leads us into wise, awakened action that leads to new experiences. That's the active learning cycle. And what's beautiful about this active learning cycle is it's not a closed loop. When you engage it, when you tilt it on its side, it's a spiral. It's a spiral of experience, reflection, action, experience, reflection, action, experience, reflection, action. And that's the upward spiral of growth and learning. It's iterative. So you don't need to make massive changes. You just need to actually reflect. And what is amazing about this, and I use this in my coaching, this is the first concept I actually share in my coaching. It's the first meta frame. I deliver this meta frame in coaching, and I hope this is super helpful to you listening, going through it. Because what I do in my coaching is, first of all, it actually declares something kind of profound. It's what you were alluding to early on, and that is the curriculum's never on the slide deck. It's not even in the book. The curriculum's what's on deck. What's on deck. That's life is the curriculum, right? And what's going on, you could say we're in a time of curriculum, of COVID's a curriculum. Isolation is a curriculum. Systemic racism is a curriculum. Or any challenge, let's say your family's going through stress and strain and divorce. That's a curriculum. That's the curriculum. It's an infinite. Life is the curriculum, and that curriculum is abundant, and it's effort, and so all you have to do is turn into that curriculum. And you can turn it in two ways. When things are going well, it's just as helpful to reflect. Like, why are things going so well? And when things are challenging, that is a beautiful time for reflection. And then it leads into action and new experiences. So this is an incredibly powerful framework. And where I start my coaching is I, first of all, I clarify with people, and I would really encourage you listening to think, what is your purpose? What is your vision and purpose? As you go through, I love the way you use the word curriculum, but that's a highly customized curriculum, and I encourage each person to declare, what is the curriculum I'd like to go through? In other words, what is my vision for my flourishing life? That's a curriculum. What is my vision for my life well lived, my life fully lived? And what are the goals that are related to that? Because what that does, once you customize your own purposeful goals, purpose-driven goals, that declares the content and experiences you want to expose yourself to. It actually declares, let's say, the books you want to read, and help you reflect on, do I really need to watch this, consume this much news? Is that a healthy content for me to be exposed to, given my drive? What are the experiences I want to invest myself in? And I hope part of the experiences that this YouTube channel will offer is I want to invest in this content and particular realm of experience, because it aligns. I mean, that's why, when we're starting a movement, if you feel aligned to a movement and part of your life is about becoming awakened, and through your awakening, experiencing greater healing, transformational growth, and being a part of creating flourishing in your own life and society at large, however large that is for you. It might just be in your family. It could be in your workplace. It could be in your communities, or it could be on a larger scale. It doesn't really matter where it is. But if you feel aligned to that purpose, then this content and experience becomes super relevant to you. And then we go into reflection. And this is where, it's what is the questions we ask ourselves. So at the end of every one of these videos, I would like us to curate some questions that spark reflection. Some questions that spark reflection. So first of all, there's an attitude of, there's both an attitude of reflection and actually a choreography of questions. So the attitude of reflection is, first of all, the attitude of ownership. The attitude of ownership. Taking responsibility for your growth and learning, and rather than waiting for things to happen to you or for somehow situations to align, is to embrace whatever circumstance is taking ownership for that. Oftentimes, when I begin my programs, my workshops, I speak about the internal activation factors that prime for growth and learning. And I begin the process by asking, what's more likely to create your vision for success? I'm going to give you two choices. What's more likely to promote your vision, so I say, I want you to imagine, whatever the time frame of the program is, you're about to leave the program here saying this has been the greatest transformational experience of your life. And I'm going to give you two options, what's most likely to predict this. The first option I'm going to give you is your success, your transformational success will be predicted by my skill as a facilitator, my ability to convey information, my skill. Or, that was the first choice. The second choice is your success will be more likely predicted by the way you show up for yourself in this experience. So what I'm enrolling, and everybody says number two. I've never had one person say it's on you, and I will show up fully. I mean, I will show up fully the same way I'll be showing up as fully as long as I can talk. And even when I can't, I'll find a way to communicate. I will show up fully for you, but ultimately your success of watching these videos will be driven by how you show up for yourself in this experience. It's ownership. It's taking ownership. And then I ask them, how would you have to show up for yourself? What are the attitudes that you would have to show up with? And what emerges is it's having an open mind, because that allows, a space of emergence. You're opening to the field. You're opening to learning, beginner's mind. Then the second activation factor is interesting. It's kindness. It's kindness, because we've spoken about how you can pluck yourself out of the field, and it makes it actually very hard to do deep transformational work. If you have self-compassion, if you have kindness first and fundamentally for yourself, you can go deeper in your learning. You can find kindness maps to courage. The more self-compassionate we become, the stronger we become, because we actually eliminate the downside, because we know if we fail, we can hold ourselves anyway. So that's ownership, openness, kindness. And then the third one is insatiable curiosity. Insatiable curiosity. Just being asking powerful questions. I'm going to come back to that. And then the fourth element is presence. And what you're describing, Amanda, is mindful presence, being able to observe and to come back, to be very present. So if let's say that you're watching videos or you're doing anything in your life, and the classic is, you're at the dinner table thinking about work or thinking about, what you have to do later that night. You're not at the dinner table with your family. But what if you actually made the dinner table, like in a mindfulness practice, like where we come back to our breath over and over again? What if you actually assigned the pivot point as being the dinner table with your family? So when your mind wanders, you're going to come back to that over and over and over again. So it's the same thing that, creating a presence in the curriculum of actually engaging, figuring out a way, how do we actually invite people back over and over again into the presence of this. And then the fifth part is the most, powerful part of all. It's reconnecting people with a sense of their purpose. Whatever this purpose is, there's a glorious story by Brendan Burchard, who is a teacher a motivational speaker, and he wrote a book, Life's Golden Ticket. And he tells, it's a parable of going through, a character going through a carnival, learning life lessons at each station. And there's this one poignant moment where the ringmaster throws the main character into the lion's cage. And there's a menacing lion, if you can imagine yourself being thrown into the cage with a lion, and he goes up against the bars, and he's cowering. I mean, he's just terrified, and he's back against the bars. And then what happens is the ringmaster throws his wife into the cage. And all of a sudden, he jumps off the bars between the lion and his wife, and he goes, "Ah!" And he pushes the lion back. And the reflection, the ringmaster said, "Well, that's interesting. How did you move from cowardice to courage in a heartbeat? What changed? What changed?" And the answer was, "I had something worth fighting for. I had something worth fighting for." And interesting enough, I have something worth fighting for. I mean, all my medical care right now, while I may be saying, I'm good to go into the field, I also have another foot in the finite world where I'm going to do everything I can. I've got a dream team of the best available conventional medicine and integrative holistic medicine, where I said to Dill the other day, I said, "My boys, let's go." I am revved up to do everything I can because my family is a big part of my purpose, and I will do all that I can to commit to being around for as long as I can. So I'm invested in that purpose as well. So there's an attitude of reflection, and then there is the choreography of the questions in terms of like, well, what's the structure of a question? And in the exchange community, I learned, Jackie Stavros has a book, Conversations Worth Having. And the questions is, are your questions in the stream of appreciation or depreciation? So typically what happens is, when you get this diagnosis, you could so easily go into why me, why now, what's going to happen to me, all those questions, because the gravitational pull is towards safety in the brain. But if you actually have the skill and the practice and the discipline to actually, in the moment of stress, ask a better question. Ask a better question, such as in the question of, appreciation. So a generative question. I pivoted to very quickly, what matters most now? Not why me, but what matters most now? What matters most now? And the answers that came back in that thread brings me to why I've had this awakening all day, because, what the answers, you ask questions, you get an answer. You get a new question, you get an answer in that stream of appreciation. So what matters most now led me into make every moment count. Make every moment count. And then the next question was, how? And what it was all about, living, loving relationships. Living, loving relationships in a full-throated receiving and giving love with others and the field itself. And so that I believe, just because I asked that question, I've had an awakening. I'm living the awakening of that. And then there's the other piece, which brings us to this work over here, which is actually living more deeply into the legacy of my work to serve others at an even higher level. And I really believe, from my experience right now, I have the ability to serve in this precious time, whatever this precious time, at a much higher level than I've ever served before, because I'm coming now from an awakened heart. So they thread together. They thread together. And then the questions is, what action steps are you going to take? What action steps are you going to take as a result of that reflection? And by the way, there's always a default reflection question. If you don't know the questions to ask, you can always ask the question, which is, what is the most inspired, helpful question I can ask? That's always the default question. That's always the default question. And then say, what does this inspire me to take action on It's going to lead me into a new experience. And so, so coming back here to this video, what I'm imagining, it would be something like a summary of the video, that would say, this is the essence of the video, but then ask, if you were to receive a life-threatening diagnosis, who would be the first people you would call, and what would be the message you would want to convey?
Yes.
Right? And then perhaps another reflective question, why wait? And what action are you going to take today? So it would be something like that, that activating, you know, in this part of it here where we would, you know, we would express this activation, this active learning cycle in people. I'll give you one more example, and now I know, Amanda, we're probably at the top of the hour. So yeah, okay. So for example, over here on this is on day 10. This is where I actually got extraordinary care in my setting up for my radiation therapy. They gave me permission to record all these sessions. I mean, to record, like it's like a documentary. But I hope what will be most conveyed is not just the experience of going through. I had my CAT scan, I had my mask fit for my precision radiation therapy. It's like Star Wars. So there's that drama in terms of me being strapped down with a mask on and seeing how that all unfolds. And people have like the pleasure of watching them put an IV in me. So it's, it makes for good television viewing. I like that a lot. But I'm imagining, I do a lot of work in with healthcare systems, you know, on leadership and resiliency. And I'm wondering how rich that would be for us to be able to say, you know, if you're a healthcare provider in a system, what are you noticing about the healthcare provider? Not only the technical healthcare, but what are you noticing about the human touch conveyed by the nurses and the technicians that cared for Danny? And how can we do better here? And it's all about us. You know, that's a big part of us, you know, working within healthcare system, which is really a machine. It's how do we truly humanize healthcare systems, bringing the care back in healthcare. So that type of awakening.
Yes.
So I'm super excited to work with you on this, man. It is, and I'm really happy that we have the opportunity to really have this discussion to give, you know, context for the journey ahead, you know, and the meaning of the profound meaning of our work together in this. I feel so blessed to be able to work with you on this. It's, you know, Sue and I could not be, you know, more appreciative of the wisdom. And when you read some of these passages, I want you to feel Amanda's, you know, we all have unique access to the field and unique voice in the field. And what comes through you from the field is just like poetry in motion. I mean, it's just, it truly is poetry in motion. And it'll be wonderful for us to collaborate in this together for, you know, people as they read these posts, they, or the descriptions of the videos. And there'll be so many other areas that you'll see Amanda's influence in this, you know, purpose-driven project. You have no idea how blessed you are to have Amanda's involvement in this project.
Well, Danny and Sue, I just can't. I feel so honored and humbled and in awe at being asked to walk alongside you guys. I mean, it's just such a tender time, and it's, you know, no one knows what's going to unfold, you know, and just thank you for the privilege of being willing to witness, to stand as a witness for you guys and to amplify your message so that people can be transformed by it. It's just, I know I will be. I don't have any, I already am, but just So honored. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Okay. Lots of love, Amanda.
Yeah. Love you guys.
Love you too. We love you. Bye.
Bye.